The great orbital station hung above Prime like a silver crown, spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars. Inside its largest chamber, representatives from 12 different alien species gathered around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. This was the Galactic Council, and today they had a problem to solve. That problem was humanity. Stood at the center of the chamber. He was a being made entirely of crystal, his body refracting light into rainbow patterns across the walls as he moved. His voice echoed with a strange musical quality when he spoke. As the council speaker, everyone listened when had something to say. Today, his words carried weight that would change the galaxy. "We must address the human situation," announced, his crystalline form pulsing with each word. "For 40 years we have watched them spread across our space. At first, we welcomed them. We thought they would find their place among us like all species do, but look at what has happened instead." He gestured, and holographic images filled the air above the table. Charts and graphs floated like ghosts, showing numbers that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. The data was clear and impossible to ignore. "Humans now make up 30% of all deep space construction workers," continued. "They hold 45% of emergency medical positions across our stations. They have founded 23 colonies in systems we deem too difficult or too dangerous to settle. They work longer hours than any of our people. They accept contracts at rates that undercut our own workers. They adapt to environments that would kill most of us." A counselor named Riven slammed his scaled fist on the table. They were a warrior race, proud and strong, with skin like armor plating and eyes that glowed red when they were angry. Right now, Riven's eyes blazed like hot coals. "They are taking everything from us," Riven growled. "My people used to dominate the mining industry. Now human crews do the same work faster and cheaper. They volunteer for the dangerous jobs we would send criminals to do. They smile while they do it. It is unnatural." Others around the table murmured in agreement. The representative, a delicate being with moth-like wings and multiple eyes, spoke in a soft voice that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. "They do not respect boundaries," they said. "In medicine, they question our methods. They suggest improvements to procedures we have perfected over centuries. They act as if their mere decades of spacefaring experience equals our of knowledge. It is insulting." More voices joined the chorus. The Vex complained about human engineers redesigning their systems without permission. The spoke of humans winning diplomatic contracts through sheer persistence. The mentioned human merchants undercutting their trade routes. One by one, the grievances piled up like stones building a wall. Listened to it all, his crystalline face impossible to read. When the chamber finally fell silent, he spoke again. "The solution is clear," he said. "We must implement the Earthborn Exclusion Act. All humans will be removed from Council space. Their colonies will be reclaimed. Their contracts will be. Their citizenship will be revoked. We will give them 6 standard months to leave peacefully." "That is extreme," said a floating jellyfish-like creature from the water worlds. Her voice bubbled through her translation device. "Many humans have lived here for most of their lives. They have families, homes, careers. Where will they go?" "Back to Earth," replied simply. "Or to unclaimed space beyond our borders. That is not our concern. The question before us is simple. Do we protect our own people, or do we allow humans to continue their expansion until they dominate every industry, every world, every aspect of our society?" The vote was called. 3 species voted against the act, and 2 others who had worked closely with humans argued for a more moderate approach, but 9 species voted in favor. The mathematics were brutal and final. The Earthborn Exclusion Act was now law. It was at that exact moment that the chamber doors opened. Ambassador walked in, flanked by his aide. Was a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Was younger, carrying a data pad and looking concerned. "Apologies for our delay," said calmly. "Our shuttle experienced a malfunction in the docking sequence. We came as quickly as we could." His crystalline body seemed to brighten slightly. "Ambassador, you arrive at an opportune moment. The Council has just passed the Earthborn Exclusion Act. All humans are to leave Council space within 6 months. I am sure you will want to coordinate the logistics with your government." For a long moment, simply stood there. His face showed no emotion. His hand tightened on her data pad, her knuckles turning white, but she too remained silent. Around the chamber, the alien counselors watched the humans, waiting for outrage, for protests, for the emotional outburst they expected. Instead, nodded slowly. "I see. May I ask what justification the Council is using for this mass deportation?" "Justification," Riven laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "You people are everywhere. You take our jobs, our opportunities, our futures. We do not need justification to protect our own interests." "We have simply grown too numerous too quickly," said quietly. "That is the crime, then, existing in too many places, working too hard, being too useful. Do not twist this into something it is not," warned. "This is about balance, about preserving the integrity of Council space. The decision is made. You have 6 months." Looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each counselor in turn. Some looked away. Others stared back defiantly. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, but somehow it filled the entire room. "You have no idea what you are doing." "Is that a threat?" Riven stood, his hand moving toward the weapon at his belt. "No," said simply. "It is an observation. We will comply with your law, Counselor Riven. Humans will leave peacefully. We will not fight. We will not sabotage. We will pack our things, say our goodbyes, and go. But you should understand something before we do." He paused, and in that pause, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. "For 40 years we have been part of your society. We took the jobs you did not want, the overnight shifts, the dangerous repairs, the boring maintenance work, the positions that offered no glory or recognition. We did them because they needed doing. We did them well. When we are gone, you will have those jobs back, all of them. I hope you are ready for that." Waved a crystalline hand dismissively. "We managed for 3,000 years before humanity arrived, Ambassador. I think we can manage again. This meeting is concluded. You will receive official notification within the hour. Good day." 2 guards both stepped forward to escort the human delegation out. Did not resist. He simply turned and walked toward the door, following close behind. As they left, glanced back one final time at the council chamber, her expression unreadable. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. In the hallway outside, and walked in silence until they were sure they were alone. Then spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Sir, should we tell them, warn them about the systems, about what will happen when we—" "No," interrupted gently. "They have made their choice. They will learn the consequences soon enough. Contact all human settlements, begin the evacuation procedures, and make sure everyone backs up their files. Everything they built, everything they fixed, everything they know, we take it all with us. Even the critical infrastructure documentation." Smiled, but it was a sad smile, the expression of someone watching a friend make a terrible mistake. Especially that. If they want to do this on their own, then let them do it on their own, truly on their own. They walked on through the station corridors, 2 humans among thousands of aliens, soon to be ghosts in a machine that did not yet know it was already broken. The message reached 3 days after the council vote. Minyu was deep underground when his communicator buzzed, standing in a tunnel that his team had carved through solid rock over the past 6 years. The air was hot and smelled of metal and sweat. Around him, drilling machines hummed as they worked, breaking apart stone that had existed unchanged for billions of years. "All human personnel are to evacuate within 2 weeks, the message read. "Colony status revoked. All equipment and facilities to be surrendered to Council authority." Minyu read it twice, then looked up at the tunnel stretching away into darkness. His tunnel, his team's work. They had found this asteroid spinning alone in space, a dead rock that nobody wanted. They had drilled into it, mapped it, tamed it. They had installed atmosphere processors and gravity generators. They had turned nothing into something. And now they had 2 weeks to leave. His second-in-command, a woman named, came running up with her own communicator in hand. Her face was red from exertion and anger. "Did you see it? Did you see what they are doing to us?" she demanded. "I saw it," Minyu replied calmly. He was a big man with rough hands and a quiet voice. People said he looked like someone who could break rocks with his bare hands, and on bad days he felt like trying. 2 weeks, we have been here for a decade. We built this place from nothing, and they give us 2 weeks. Minyu put a hand on her shoulder. Then we better get started. Gather everyone. I want a full team meeting in the main in 1 hour. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 23 human colonies. On the ice world of Belton 4, families packed up homes they had built with their own hands. On the jungle planet of III, humans dismantled research stations that had operated for 15 years. On the desert world of, children who had never seen Earth cried as their parents explained they were leaving the only home they had ever known. But something strange happened during these evacuations. The humans did not rush. They did not panic. They packed methodically, carefully, taking their time despite the tight deadlines. They made backup copies of everything. Every schematic, every repair log, every manual they had written. They saved it all to portable drives that disappeared into cargo containers. When council officials arrived to take possession of the colonies, they found facilities that were technically functional but strangely incomplete. The mining equipment on 7 worked, but the advanced efficiency modifications that Minyu's team had installed were removed. The power plant operated, but it ran at 70% of the capacity it had reached under human management. The water purification system functioned, but it consumed 3 times as much energy as it had the week before. "Where are the efficiency upgrades?" a Vex official demanded when he arrived to inspect 7. Minyu showed him a perfectly maintained smile. "We only installed council standard equipment, sir. That is what the regulations require. If the colony was running better than standard, well, that must have been we corrected it before we left. But the production records show you were producing twice the standard output." "Those records must be mistaken, sir. Council standard equipment produces council standard results. That is just physics." The official's crystalline body flickered with frustration, but there was nothing he could say. The equipment was exactly as it was supposed to be, according to every official specification. If it worked poorly, that was not the human's fault. On station, Medical Director faced a different kind of departure. She stood in her surgical bay, a room she had designed herself, watching as a doctor examined the equipment with delicate antennae. "This device," they said, pointing at a complex surgical machine. "I do not recognize this configuration." "It is a standard tissue regenerator," explained. "Model TR-47, manufactured by Vex Industries. But the interface is different, and these additional modules. Those are safety enhancements I installed, but do not worry, I am removing them before I go. The machine will return to factory settings." "Wait, no, those enhancements, the survival rate for trauma patients increased by 40% since you installed those. We need them." Shook her head. "They are custom modifications not approved by council medical standards. You understand, we must follow the regulations." She reached over and began disconnecting the modules one by one. The doctor watched with growing horror as the sophisticated surgical suite transformed back into a basic, by-the-book medical facility. When finished, the machine looked exactly like the one in the instruction manual, exactly as it had looked when it was first installed, before had spent 3 years improving it. "But patients will die," they whispered. Then I suggest you learn very quickly how to operate at factory specifications, replied. Her voice was not unkind, but it was not sympathetic either. You have the manuals. Everything you need is documented in the standard operating procedures. Good luck. At the main council station, technician spent his last week training his replacement. The Vex engineer who took over his position was confident, almost arrogant. His name was, and he had designed environmental systems for 70 years. I do not understand why they assign me to train under a human, complained. I have more experience with these systems than you have been alive. Smiled and nodded. You are probably right. Let me just show you a few things before I go. He brought up screen after screen of code, walking through the environmental control systems for the entire station. Barely paid attention, convinced he already knew everything he needed to know. These subroutines here, pointed out, they handle temperature regulation for sectors 7 through 12. Notice anything unusual. Glanced at the code. It is non-standard, inefficient. Why are there so many redundant checks? Because sectors 7 through 12 house personnel. They need temperature variations that the standard system does not provide. These subroutines compensate for that. I would have designed it differently. I am sure you would have, agreed pleasantly. Here is the documentation for everything I have done over the past 12 years. All the patches, all the fixes, all the custom solutions. It is all in these files. He transferred several thousand documents to his workstation, looked at the file count with disdain. I will review it when I have time. The standard operating procedures are sufficient. Of course, said, I am sure everything will be fine. On the last day, Ambassador stood at a transport hub, watching as the final groups of humans boarded colony ships. Thousands of people, carrying whatever they could fit in regulation cargo containers, leaving behind lives they had built over decades. Children clutched toys. Old people leaned on canes, looking back one last time at the station they had called home. Approached with a data pad. That is everyone, sir. The last human civilian has boarded, just you and me left. In the files, the backups. Everything is secured. Every schematic, every modification, every improvement we made over 40 years. All of it is on our ships now. The Council has their standard equipment running at standard specifications. Nodded slowly. He thought about trying to feel sad, but mostly he felt tired. Tired and curious. Curious about what would happen next. They boarded the last ship, a colony vessel called Perseverance. As it pulled away from the station, looked out the viewport at Council space, at the dozens of stations and worlds where humans had lived and worked. Lights glittered in the darkness like distant stars. Send a message, he told the communications officer. One word, good luck, send it to the Council station. The message went out, traveling through space at faster-than-light speeds. On the Council station, security officers intercepted it, analyzed it for hidden meanings or threats, found nothing and dismissed it as irrelevant. The human ships gathered at the edge of Council space, a fleet of vessels carrying an entire people. They did not look back as they crossed the border into unclaimed territory. They traveled for 3 weeks, deep into space that no one wanted, and there they found a dead system with plenty of raw materials and no one to claim it. They called their new station Haven. Within a month it was operational. Within 3 months it was thriving. The humans worked with the same quiet efficiency they had always shown, building something from nothing, turning an empty system into a home. And then they waited, because they knew something the Council did not yet understand. They knew exactly what they had left behind. The first problem appeared 3 weeks after the last human ship crossed the border. It was small, barely worth noticing. A waste recycling station on Prime experienced what the automated systems called minor efficiency degradation. The facility that normally processed waste at 100% capacity was now running at 88%. Not critical, Not dangerous, just slower than it should be. The station manager, a being called with 6 arms and compound eyes, filed a maintenance request. The request sat in a queue for 2 days because the human who normally handled such requests immediately was gone. When a technician finally arrived, he looked at the system, scratched his head, and announced he would need to study the manuals. "It should not be this complicated," the technician complained. "It is just a recycling system." "It was working fine last month," replied. "Last month the human was still here. She probably knew some trick. I will figure it out." 3 days later, the system was still running at 88%. The technician had managed to improve it to 90% but could not understand why it would not reach full capacity. He left it there, declaring it acceptable performance. Similar small problems began appearing across Council space like weeds sprouting after rain. An asteroid mining rig near Belton 4 had a power coupling failure. The replacement part was standard, installed correctly, but the rig now took 3 days to complete operations that used to take 3 hours. Engineers studied the problem and determined the old setup must have been running outside normal parameters. They reset everything to standard and called it fixed, even though productivity dropped by 60%. On Prime, a water purification plant started consuming triple the normal energy. Technicians checked every component and found them all working correctly according to specifications. The plant had always consumed this much energy, they decided. The previous efficiency reports must have been filed incorrectly. The Council's Infrastructure Committee met to discuss these incidents. There were 17 minor malfunctions across Council space, all within 6 weeks of the human departure. The committee chair, a floating named Ossian, reviewed the reports with growing confusion. "These are all different systems on different worlds," Ossian noted. "There is no common factor except timing. They all started failing after the humans left." "Coincidence," declared Riven, who sat on the committee. "Systems degrade. This is normal. We are seeing a statistical cluster, nothing more." "Perhaps," Ossian replied, though he did not sound convinced. The problems did not stop. By week 8, the malfunctions were accelerating. Life support systems on 17 stations experienced unexplained fluctuations. Nothing dangerous, but temperatures would drift by 2 or 3 degrees before correcting. Humidity would spike and drop. Air pressure would vary slightly. Each individual incident was within acceptable ranges, but they kept happening over and over. Jump gate calibrations began drifting outside their normal parameters. Ships still made it through, but there were delays. A trip that took 3 days now took 4. Shipping companies complained. The Council's Transportation Authority investigated and found that the jump gates were operating exactly as designed. The improved performance everyone remembered must have been imaginary. Power grids across 4 industrial worlds suffered rolling brownouts. Not blackouts, just periodic drops in power that forced factories to slow their production. Energy engineers checked the systems and found everything working correctly. They compared current performance to the original design specifications from when the grids were first installed, sometimes centuries ago. Everything matched perfectly. "But we were producing twice this much power last year," factory managers complained. "You must be misremembering," the engineers replied. On the Council station itself, the Vex engineer was having a very bad month. The environmental systems he had taken over from were behaving strangely. Nothing catastrophic, but sectors 7 through 12 kept experiencing temperature problems. The personnel who lived there were complaining constantly. Open the files had left behind. There were thousands of them. Documents labeled things like temperature compensation routine and emergency thermal override for Sector 9. He tried reading through them, but the code was dense and confusing. It referenced systems within systems, patches built on patches, custom solutions that assumed knowledge of 10 other custom solutions. He found a document titled "Read this first critical information." He opened it. The first line read, "The environmental system as originally designed cannot handle mixed-species habitation. The following modifications are necessary to prevent." Stopped reading. This was obviously an exaggeration. The Vex had designed the environmental systems. They were perfect. This human had probably just made unnecessary changes because he did not understand proper engineering. He closed the file and went back to trying to fix the temperature issues using standard procedures. It took him 4 days to implement a solution that worked for 3 hours before the temperatures started drifting again. Medical facilities across Council space faced their own crisis. His replacement on station, a surgeon named, watched helplessly as a trauma patient died on his operating table. It was the third death in 2 weeks. Before the human left, the trauma center had a 97% survival rate. Now it was at 70% and dropping. Reviewed the surgical procedures obsessively, trying to understand what had changed. Everything was being done according to Council medical standards. Every step was correct, but patients kept dying. In desperation, he searched through the files had left behind. He found detailed notes on modifications she had made to the surgical equipment, custom configurations, modified protocols, techniques that were not in any medical textbook. He tried to implement one of her procedures, a modification to the tissue regenerator that involved recalibrating 3 separate components in a specific sequence. It took him 6 tries to get it right. When he finally succeeded, his next trauma patient survived an injury that would have been fatal days before. But there were dozens of other modifications in files, hundreds of custom procedures. It would take months to learn them all and was just one doctor in one facility. Across Council space, human doctors had worked in hundreds of hospitals and medical stations. They were all gone now, and they had taken their knowledge with them. The Council's Infrastructure Committee met again, this time in emergency session. The small problems had become medium-sized problems. The medium-sized problems were threatening to become large problems. Ossian floated at the head of the table, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with agitation. "We need to face facts," Ossian said. "Every system the humans touched is degrading. Life support, power generation, medical facilities, mining operations, transportation networks, all of them. They sabotaged us," Riven snarled. "They poisoned our systems before they left." "No," said a Vex engineer named who had been reviewing the technical reports. "That is not what happened. I have examined the code, the equipment, the procedures. Everything is running exactly as designed, as originally designed by us before the humans arrived." "Then what is the problem?" Riven demanded. His crystalline body dimmed, a sign of distress among his people. "The problem is that our original designs were not as good as we thought. They worked, yes, but barely. The humans found thousands of small flaws, inefficiencies, and limitations. They fixed them. They improved everything they touched, not with grand redesigns or expensive overhauls, but with countless small modifications. A patch here, an adjustment there, a custom routine to handle an edge case we never considered." "That cannot be right," interjected. "We have been operating these systems for centuries. They worked fine before the humans arrived." "Did they?" challenged. "Or did we simply accept lower performance as normal? I have been comparing current system efficiency to what we achieved 2 years ago. Every single system that humans worked on was operating at 30 to 200% above original specifications. We did not notice because the improvements happened gradually over 4 decades." The chamber fell silent. The implications were too large, too embarrassing to acknowledge. Finally, Riven spoke. "Then we bring them back. We force them to return and fix what they broke." "They did not break anything," corrected quietly. "They fixed things. We broke those fixes by removing them." "Semantics," Riven growled. "Contact this ambassador. Offer him whatever he wants. Credits, territory, apologies, just get the humans back here." The council sent messages to Haven Station. Polite requests at first, then generous offers, then increasingly desperate pleas. Every message received the same response. A simple automated reply stating that Haven Station was not accepting communications at this time. They tried sending ships. The vessels were turned away at the border politely but firmly. The humans were not hostile. They simply would not engage. 3 months after the Exclusion Act, Council Space was experiencing what economists called cascading systemic failures. Nothing had collapsed completely, but everything was degrading. Station populations were being evacuated because life support was unreliable. Factories were running at half capacity. Hospitals had waiting lists for basic procedures. The jump gate network was so unreliable that some companies stopped scheduling shipments. The economy was contracting, not crashing but slowly deflating like a punctured balloon. Trade between council worlds dropped by 30%. 3 member species began quietly withdrawing from joint projects, focusing their resources on their own territories. Called another emergency council session. When the representatives gathered, the chamber felt different, less confident, more afraid. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and now they were watching their civilization develop cracks. "We need to discuss our options," began. Before he could continue, the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the chamber. Emergency lighting should have activated instantly. It always did. The council station had 17 redundant systems specifically to prevent this, but there was nothing. Just darkness and the sound of 12 species trying not to panic. 3 heartbeats later, the lights returned, but they were wrong. Dim, flickering, casting strange shadows, and every screen in the chamber displayed the same message in perfect council standard. The message read, "You removed your maintenance crew. This is what maintenance looked like." Then a face appeared on the screens. It was Ambassador, broadcasting from somewhere far away. He looked tired but calm. Behind him, monitors showed system status displays from across council space. Thousands of red warning indicators, critical failures spreading like disease. And when he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it filled the chamber with the weight of truth that could no longer be. "For 40 years, he said, we fixed your broken systems. Now you get to see what broken actually looks like." The screens in the council chamber glowed with space, and behind him, the humans of Haven Station worked at their consoles as if this was just another day. No weapons, no warriors, just people doing their jobs, monitoring the slow collapse of a civilization that had thrown them away. Sat calmly, his hands folded on the desk in front of him. When he spoke, his voice carried no anger, no satisfaction, no emotion at all. It was the voice of an engineer explaining a technical problem. "For 40 years, humanity integrated into your society," he said. "We took the jobs you did not want, the overnight shifts, the dangerous repairs in hard vacuum, the boring maintenance work that offered no prestige, no recognition, no glory. We did not take these jobs because we were lesser beings. We took them because we saw problems that needed solving." The screen split, showing footage alongside his face. The council members watched as images played across their displays. Working for 18 straight hours during a coolant crisis on the council station, his face haggard but determined. Operating on a child for 9 hours when the surgical equipment failed, improvising with tools that were never meant for that purpose. Minu and his crew holding together a collapsing mine shaft with nothing but emergency and desperate courage, saving 40 Vex workers who had ignored safety protocols. "We worked while you slept," continued. "We fixed things you did not know were broken. We improved systems you thought were perfect. We did this because it is what we do. Humans solve problems. It is our nature. When we see something that does not work properly, we cannot help ourselves. We fix it." Found his voice, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. You sabotaged our systems. You planted failures that would activate when you left. No, his voice was firm but not loud. We did not sabotage anything. We simply stopped fixing things. What you are experiencing now is your own infrastructure, running exactly as you designed it without human intervention. These are your systems, operating at their original specifications. He gestured, and the screens changed to show technical readouts. Complex diagrams of power grids, environmental systems, medical equipment, mining operations. Each one highlighted areas where human modifications had been removed or had degraded without maintenance. The Vex build elegant systems, explained, his tone almost professorial. Mathematically perfect, beautiful in their precision. But Vex systems fail gracefully. They have single points of failure that cascade slowly. You never noticed because humans installed redundancy patches that prevented those failures. He pulled up another schematic. The build robust systems that resist damage, but systems cannot adapt to change. When you add new species to a station, when you modify power requirements, when you upgrade equipment, systems do not adjust. They continue operating exactly as programmed. Humans wrote adaptive routines that made your systems flexible. More schematics appeared. The build precise systems with minimal waste, but precision requires specific conditions. When those conditions vary even slightly, efficiency drops dramatically. Humans installed compensation algorithms that maintained performance across varying conditions. The council members stared at the screens, seeing their own engineering limitations laid bare in technical detail. Each species had built to their strengths, but every strength came with corresponding weaknesses. Weaknesses they had never acknowledged because humans had quietly compensated for them all. You built systems that worked, said. We built systems that worked when nothing else did. We patched. We jury-rigged. We made incompatible technologies talk to each other. We fixed your infrastructure so thoroughly that you forgot it was ever broken. Counselor, the floating jellyfish being who had voted against the Exclusion Act, spoke with her bubbling voice translator. But surely you knew this would happen. You knew what would occur when you left. Why did you not warn us? For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. Not anger, sadness perhaps, or disappointment. I did warn you, he said quietly. In the council chamber the day you voted. I told you that you had no idea what you were doing. You dismissed it as an empty threat. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixing on the camera as if he could see through it to the beings watching on the other side. Do you want to know what hurt the most? It was not the deportation. Humans have been driven from places before. We are resilient. We adapt. We survive. What hurt was the disrespect, the casual dismissal of 40 years of work. The assumption that because our jobs were unglamorous, they were unimportant, that because we were willing to do the work others would not, we were somehow lesser. The screens changed again, showing more footage. Human technicians training alien replacements who barely paid attention, confident in their own superiority. Meetings where human suggestions were ignored simply because they came from humans. Promotion boards where qualified humans were passed over for aliens with half their experience. We were invisible to you, said. You saw us every day, but you did not really see us. The human who kept your life support running. The human who made sure your food was safe. The human who monitored your medical systems while you slept. We were furniture. Useful furniture, perhaps, but not people worth considering. Riven slammed his fist on the table, the impact making the damaged lights flicker. Enough philosophy. What do you want? Credits. Territory. We will negotiate. Name your price. Shook his head slowly. Too late. Too late. Riven's eyes blazed red. We are offering you whatever you want. And we are declining, replied. You made your choice. You decided you did not need us. Now you get to live with that choice. People will die, cried out. Our medical systems are failing. Our life support is unreliable. You cannot simply abandon us to collapse. Cannot raised an eyebrow. You ordered us to leave. We left. You told us we were not wanted in council space. We are staying out of council space. We are doing exactly what you told us to do. His crystalline body was flickering rapidly now, showing distress. This is murder. You are killing billions by refusing to help. No, corrected, and now there was steel in his voice. You are killing billions by refusing to maintain your own infrastructure. You are killing billions by assuming the work humans did was somehow beneath you. You are killing billions by valuing prestige over competence. He stood up, and the camera followed him as he walked across the Haven Station control room. Other humans worked at their stations, monitoring their own systems. Everything was running smoothly, efficiently. The contrast with council space was obvious and painful. Every human who worked in your society has a skill you now desperately need, said. Every technician, every engineer, every doctor, every maintenance worker. They are all here on Haven Station and our colonies. They are all working, building new systems, new homes, new lives. We are not hoarding their knowledge out of spite. We are simply not sharing it with people who told us to leave. This is blackmail, Riven accused. This is consequences, replied. For 4 decades you benefited from human labor. You took our improvements. You enjoyed higher efficiency, better safety, improved quality of life. And when we asked for nothing more than fair treatment and basic respect, you responded by deporting us. Actions have consequences, counselor. You are learning that now. Ossian floated forward, his voice desperate. Ambassador, please be reasonable. What will it take to repair this situation? What are your demands? Looked directly into the camera for a long moment before answering. My demands? You want my demands? He smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Here they are. Figure it out yourselves. Learn to maintain your own systems. Train your own people to do the unglamorous work. Value the beings who keep your civilization running, whoever they are. Stop assuming that some jobs are beneath you. That will take years, protested. Our economy will collapse. Our society will fragment. We need help now. Then you should have thought of that before you voted, replied. You had 3,000 years to build a sustainable civilization. Instead, you built one that required a servant class to function. When that servant class refused to be servants anymore, when they asked to be treated as equals, you threw them out. Now you face the same choice every civilization eventually faces: adapt or decline. He walked back to his desk and sat down. Behind him, a young woman approached, his aide. She handed him a data pad, whispered something in his ear, and left, glanced at the pad, then looked back at the camera. I am told your council has been sending us messages, offers of money, territory, apologies. The answer to all of them is the same. No, we are not coming back, not as a servant class, not as second-rate citizens, not as convenient laborers you can dismiss when we become inconvenient. Then what? Asked, her voice breaking. We just collapse, our alliance just ends. I do not know, answered honestly. That depends on you, on whether you can learn, whether you can change, whether you can build a society that values all types of work, not just the prestigious jobs. I hope you can. I genuinely hope you can. But that hope will not make me send my people back into a system that did not respect them. The transmission flickered, reached toward something off camera, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. This conversation is over. Do not contact Haven Station again until you have something meaningful to offer. Not money, not territory, something meaningful. What would that even be? Demanded. Smiled sadly. If you have to ask, you have not learned anything yet. Out. The screens went dark. The council chamber lights stabilized, though they were still dimmer than before. The council members sat in silence, each processing what they had just witnessed. Finally, Riven spoke into the quiet. We should send the fleet, force them to comply. The Vex engineer laughed. It was a bitter sound like crystal breaking. With what fleet, counselor? The military systems have been experiencing critical malfunctions for 6 weeks. Weapons targeting, navigation, life support on warships, all human-maintained, all degrading. Riven opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. His eyes, which had been burning red with anger, slowly faded to orange. Defeat. Then what do we do? Someone asked. Nobody had an answer. 72 hours after its broadcast, Council space was in. Not metaphorically. Station 12 had lost artificial gravity in 3 sectors, and beings floated helplessly through corridors while emergency crews struggled to evacuate them. The gravity generators were working exactly as designed. The problem was that the original design was flawed, and a human technician named had been compensating for that flaw for 8 years with a custom routine that ran every 3 hours. Nobody knew about it until it stopped running. On Prime, the capital world of the Council, food shipments were delayed by 17 days. The agricultural processing facilities that normally prepared food for transport were running at 40% capacity. Vex engineers examined every component and found them all functioning correctly. The reduced output was simply what the systems were supposed to produce according to their original specifications. The higher output everyone remembered must have been achieved through temporary overclocking that was never sustainable, except it had been sustained for 30 years. Medical director on station was working 20-hour days trying to keep patients alive. He had managed to implement 7 of modifications to the surgical equipment, but there were 43 more he did not understand. Every day, people died from injuries they would have survived a few months ago. Stopped sleeping. He stopped eating regularly. He just worked, desperately trying to learn in weeks what had perfected over years. On the 3rd night of this routine, he made a mistake. A simple mistake, the kind that happens when someone is too tired to think clearly. He a tissue regenerator by 0.03%. The patient survived barely, but it took 8 hours of emergency surgery to fix the damage. Sat in his office afterward, his delicate wings drooping, and cried. He had spent 70 years studying medicine. He was considered an expert in his field, but he could not do what one human doctor had made look easy. The Council's economy was contracting at an accelerating rate. Trade between member worlds dropped by 50%. Jump gate malfunctions meant ships were taking twice as long to travel when they traveled at all. 3 separate shipping companies declared bankruptcy in a single week. The stock markets across Council space were in panic mode, with values dropping by 10% daily. Member species began to fragment. They quietly recalled their personnel from joint military bases, focusing their resources on their own territory. They stopped attending Council economic summits. The Vex started hoarding resources rather than trading them. The 3,000-year alliance was cracking along every fault line, and the pressure was building. The Council met daily now, each session more desperate than the last. They sent more messages to Haven Station, increasingly generous offers, promises of full citizenship, guaranteed representation, protected rights. Every message received the same automated response. Haven Station is not accepting communications at this time. They tried to hire individual human contractors, offering massive payment for anyone who would return and help fix the failing systems. But when they managed to contact humans through indirect channels, every single one refused and directed them back to Ambassador. Councillor Riven, in a moment of desperation, proposed military action. The fleet could force Haven to comply, but when he actually reviewed the military readiness reports, he discovered that 40% of warships were experiencing critical systems failures. Navigation, weapons, life support, communications. All of them had been maintained by humans. All of them were degrading. The military option was not just inadvisable, it was impossible. They could barely keep their own fleet operational, let alone conduct offensive operations. 3 months after the Exclusion Act, stood alone in his private quarters on the Council station. His crystalline body, normally bright and sharp, looked dull and fractured. He had not slept in days. His species did not sleep the way others did, but they needed rest periods, had skipped 17 rest periods in a row. He reviewed report after report, each one worse than the last. 12 stations evacuated due to life support failures. Industrial output down 62%. Medical facilities operating at emergency-only status. Food shortages on 7 worlds. Power grid failures cascading across the infrastructure. And the worst part, it was still not sabotage. Engineers kept confirming it. Everything was running as designed. The humans had not planted bombs or viruses or logic traps. They had simply removed their improvements, and the original systems were failing under loads they were never designed to handle. The Council had built a civilization on foundations they thought were solid. They were not. They were just good enough, and humans had spent 40 years making good enough into excellent. Now that excellence was gone and good enough was proving to be nowhere near sufficient. Made a decision. He contacted his aide and gave instructions. Then he boarded a small, fast ship and set course for Haven Station. He did not ask permission from the Council. He did not tell them he was going. He just went. The trip took 4 days. When he arrived at the border of human space, he sent a simple message. "Ambassador, this is Speaker. I request a personal audience. I am alone and unarmed, please." For 6 hours there was no response. Waited, his ship drifting in neutral space, wondering if the humans would simply ignore him. Finally, a reply came. "Permission granted. Approach Haven Station on the transmitted vector. Any deviation will result in your immediate ejection from human space." Followed the instructions precisely. Haven Station grew larger in his viewport, a massive structure that humans had built in just 3 months. It was not elegant like Vex architecture or imposing like construction. It was practical, efficient, and obviously functional. Very human. He docked at the designated port and was met by 2 human security officers. They were polite but thorough, scanning him for weapons and recording devices. When they were satisfied, they escorted him through corridors that were clean, well-lit, and absolutely stable. No flickering lights, no temperature fluctuations, no gravity hiccups. Everything worked perfectly. The contrast with Council space was painful. Ambassador met him in a simple conference room. Also present were Minu and several other humans recognized from various facilities across Council space. The people who had actually done the work. The ones the Council had ignored until they were gone. Speaker greeted him with a nod. "This is unexpected. The Council sent you to negotiate." "No," admitted, his voice carrying that musical quality his species was known for. "The Council does not know I am here. I came on my own because someone needed to say what the Council is too proud to say." He paused, his crystalline body dimming slightly in what his species used as a gesture of humility. "We were wrong. Profoundly, completely, catastrophically wrong. Not just about the Exclusion Act, though that was obviously a disaster. We were wrong about humanity, about your value, about what you contributed to our society. We dismissed you as laborers doing simple jobs, never realizing that those jobs were the foundation that held everything else up." Listened without expression. The other humans remained quiet, waiting. "We are failing," continued. "Our economy is in collapse. Our infrastructure is degrading. Our society is fragmenting. And it is our fault. Not because you sabotaged us, but because we built systems that required constant, skilled maintenance, then disrespected the people who provided that maintenance." He looked around the room at each human face. "I have come to ask for help. Not to demand it, not to threaten, not to make grand offers of wealth and territory. I am asking, as one being to another, for help. Our people are suffering. They are dying. And we cannot fix it ourselves." "Why not?" Minu asked. His voice was not hostile, just genuinely curious. "You have engineers. You have brilliant minds. You built civilizations that lasted thousands of years." Because we forgot how to do the unglamorous work, answered honestly. We specialized. We built hierarchies. We decided that some jobs were beneath certain species, and over time we lost the knowledge and skills required for basic maintenance. We can design a jump gate, but we cannot keep it running efficiently. We can build a hospital, but we cannot adapt when conditions change. We are architects who forgot that buildings need foundations. Leaned forward. What exactly are you asking for? I am asking for humanity to return to Council space, said. But not as you were. Not as invisible workers we take for granted. I want to propose a new treaty. One that recognizes humans as the 13th member species of the Council, with full voting rights and guaranteed representation in all infrastructure decisions. We heard that offer before, interjected. Through your messages, you promised citizenship and rights. What makes this different? What makes it different is that I am here to admit we need you more than you need us, replied. Your messages were correct. We have nothing you truly need. You have built your own station, established your own colonies, created your own society. You are thriving while we collapse. We need your help, and we are willing to pay the actual price for that help. Which is, asked. Respect, said simply. Recognition. A fundamental change in how Council society views essential work. We need to create a Department of Essential Services with authority equal to our military and diplomatic branches. We need to guarantee that the people who maintain our infrastructure have the same status, pay, and recognition as those who design it. We need to stop pretending that some jobs are beneath us. He paused, his crystalline form pulsing with what might have been emotion. More than that, we need humans to teach us, not just how to fix our systems, but how to think like you do, how to see problems and solve them instead of working around them, how to value competence over prestige, how to build systems that work when nothing else does. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally spoke. You are asking for a cultural revolution, the complete restructuring of Council society. That will take years, decades. Some species will resist. I know, agreed. But what is the alternative? We continue our decline until our civilization collapses completely. We have perhaps a year before failures become catastrophic. If we do nothing, the Galactic Council will become a historical footnote, an alliance that died because it could not adapt. And if we agree, asked, if we come back and help, what guarantees do we have that this will not happen again? That in 20 years, when the crisis is over, you will not decide you do not need us anymore? None, admitted. I cannot guarantee the future. What I can offer is the Treaty of Haven, written jointly by humans and Council representatives, with enforcement mechanisms and regular reviews. I can offer constitutional changes that cannot be reversed without unanimous agreement. I can offer my personal commitment to fight for these changes every day for the rest of my life. He looked at directly. I cannot undo what was done. I cannot give you back the months of displacement and hardship. I can only apologize and try to build something better going forward. Sat back in his chair, thinking. The other humans remained quiet, letting him process. Finally, he spoke. We will need to discuss this among ourselves, and we will need to see a draft of this treaty before we agree to anything. Of course, said, take all the time you need, I will wait. The negotiations took 2 weeks. Humans and Council representatives worked around the clock, drafting, arguing, revising, and refining. The final Treaty of Haven was 47 pages long and covered everything from voting rights to labor protections to educational requirements. When it was done, read through it one final time, then looked at. This is acceptable, but understand, if the Council violates these terms, if you try to marginalize us again, we will leave, and next time we will not help you recover. Understood, agreed. Shall we present this to the Council? They returned to Council space together. The presentation of the treaty took 3 days of debate. Several councilors objected. Riven argued against giving humans special privileges. 2 other species threatened to leave the council rather than accept human authority over infrastructure. But the numbers were undeniable. In the 4 months since the humans left, the council economy had contracted by 40%. 14 stations had been abandoned. Death rates were up 300%. The choice was clear: accept the treaty or watch their civilization die. The vote passed 9-3, the same margin that had passed the Exclusion Act, but in the opposite direction. The irony was not lost on anyone. Within a week, human engineers, doctors, technicians, and maintenance workers began returning to council space. But this time, they arrived as equals. Minu returned to 7 as director of mining operations, with a full Vex engineering team working under him and learning his methods. Reopened her trauma center with triple the budget and a staff of alien doctors eager to learn human improvisation techniques. Took his old position on the council station, but now as chief of infrastructure with a staff of 200, an authority that actually matched his responsibilities. When he reviewed the environmental systems, he found them in terrible condition. It took him 3 months to rebuild everything he had spent 12 years creating the first time. But this time he did not work alone. The Vex engineer who had replaced him worked alongside him, learning not just what to do but why. The Vex was humbled by his failures but determined to improve. He asked questions. He took notes. He admitted when he did not understand something. "Why do you use so many redundant checks in this code?" asked one day, reviewing a thermal regulation routine. "Because systems fail," explained patiently. "The question is never if they will fail, but when. Redundancy means that when one part fails, others compensate. The system keeps running while you fix the problem instead of crashing immediately. The Vex approach is to build systems that do not fail." "Nothing never fails," replied. "Everything breaks eventually. The trick is building systems that fail safely, that give you warning, that keep running long enough to fix them." Process this, his crystalline body flickering with thought. "Our entire engineering philosophy focuses on preventing failure. Yours focuses on managing it." "Both are useful," said. "The best systems use both approaches. Vex precision combined with human flexibility. That is what we should be building together." Across council space, similar conversations were happening. Humans teaching aliens their methods. Aliens teaching humans their knowledge. Both sides learning that their approaches were not superior or inferior, just different, and that combining them produced something better than either could achieve alone. 1 year after the Treaty of Haven, the Council held a special session. They were voting on admission criteria for a potential 14th member species, and race called the who had applied for membership. The discussion began predictably, focusing on what they could offer: resources from their mineral-rich worlds, advanced biotech derived from their unique biology, a fleet of fast, efficient ships. Then Ambassador, now a full council member with voting rights, spoke up. "These are all valuable contributions, but perhaps we should also ask what they need, what problems they are facing that they cannot solve alone, what gaps exist in their society that council membership might fill." There was a pause. Riven looked uncomfortable. His crystalline body brightened with what might have been approval. Finally spoke. "That is a wise perspective, Ambassador. We should examine how we can help them as much as how they can help us. A council should be mutual support, not just mutual exploitation." The discussion continued with new questions. What challenges did they face? How could existing council members assist them? What would a genuine partnership look like? The vote to admit the passed unanimously, with conditions that focused on integration and mutual benefit rather than just extraction of resources. After the session, approached in the corridor outside the chamber. "Thank you," the crystalline being said, "for that question, for reminding us why we form alliances in the first place." Smiled. "We all forget sometimes. That is why we need each other, to remember what matters." We still have much to learn. We all do, agreed. That is the point of a council, is it not? We fill each other's gaps. We help each other grow. We build something together that none of us could build alone. His body pulsed with light. I believe we might actually achieve that, finally. They walked together back through the council station. Around them, beings of 13 different species worked side by side. A human technician explained a repair procedure to a Vex apprentice. A doctor practiced a surgical technique under supervision. An engineer collaborated with Minu's team on a new mining technology that combined durability with human adaptability. The lights stayed on. The gravity remained stable. The air was clean and perfectly regulated. In the background, mostly unnoticed, the infrastructure of civilization hummed along smoothly. Because humans had returned, not as servants but as partners, not as invisible workers but as valued members of society. They fixed problems, taught others to fix problems, and built systems that worked when nothing else did. And this time, everyone appreciated it. This time, everyone understood that the unglamorous work of keeping civilization running was just as important as the prestigious work of designing it. This time they had learned. The lesson had been expensive, painful, nearly catastrophic, but they had learned it. And the galaxy was better for it.